A brand new branch of special forces. Look at it. Ooh. But let's not focus on that. Let's go back to the beginning. This is the Dev Corner, where they focus on some of the changes coming up in the future of Hearts of Iron 4. Being there's a lot of placeholder graphics in this dev diary, and they've done little doodles, like here, in Paint. Kind of tells me this is pretty early in development, and I'm gonna feel in this is coming no time soon. Because this has been announced prior to an actual official DLC release, I think this is all coming bundled as a part of a DLC. So I don't know, my instincts are screaming at me October, November for this, and this is probably gonna come bundled with a whole DLC. I do not work for Hearts of Iron 4. I'm merely just spreading this information to you, and this is all speculation. I don't actually know the real answers, but I'm just taking a guess based on previous DLC releases. Could I be wrong? Well, we'll find out in 3 or 4 months' time. The usual pattern is there'll be an announcement trailer. It'll say roughly the release date, like Q3, Q4, and then sometimes it'll give a precise actual release date. In the past, previous big expansions for horror usually come out around October, November. Hence the reason why I'm just repeating that same information. Anyway, let's get into the changes they're going to be making in future. And it is going to be around island warfare. Something that has been updated since release. So thank goodness we're going to see some big updates. And these are all core game mechanics. So these super excite me. We're going to be talking about islands, aircraft carriers, and also a new branch of special forces. Here we are, the Caroline Islands. 42,000 people, the middle of the Pacific. What do we have here? What is this? This is an airbase, but it is capped at a maximum amount of 4 airbases, so 8,000 planes, which is still a substantial amount of planes, which is a new feature that we've talked about on previous dev diaries. Now, islands, particularly smaller islands, will be limited to their airbase numbers, which makes sense because there'll be limited land for planes to actually land on for the capacity, but also a limited size for the naval bases as well. We're all familiar with the naval meta. If you want to get more supply, particularly around the coastline, you build multiple naval bases, individual level 1s because they're the cheapest, and you get a free supply depot with that, and then you connect them up with railways. There's really no downside to this strategy. They're quite expensive, I suppose, and let's say if the enemy captures them, you can't necessarily destroy them. They're permanently in the game. You can never get rid of them. So potentially if your enemy captures them, they could be stealing your supply and using it against you, which is a potential issue. But for the most part, it's a foolproof strategy. Will this change that particular kind of gameplay? I'm not certain. Maybe what I personally think, the first level of a naval base should be more expensive. Maybe only slightly cheaper than Supply Depot. But then I suppose it defeats the purpose of any kind of strategy around placing a new one to get supply to there, potentially make another naval invasions. It makes the game more railroady and you have to stick to a specific strategy to play a certain way. And I do like the ability to build a naval base, even though it might be expensive, just so you can just mix up the game style. Anyway, besides that, we have nothing to see here. A fantastic placeholder. And then we have, that looks like a chest, and that looks like an intelligence icon. This, to me, looks like a special facility. Are the Caroline Islands famous for anything? Were nuclear bombs tested here? Maybe. I'm speculating. I don't actually know. Probably you guys know, probably better. Comment below. So this has a natural harbor, increasing its level cap of naval base in the Caroline Islands from 6 to 8. So there is a natural cap of 6 for this style of island. I think islands vary from place to place, but it has a higher number because it has a natural harbor, which is something you usually only see in like Europa Universalis, for instance. Having a level 8 cap is quite important, as will allow. In the previous dev diary, not all islands will be equal under this new system. We created a concept of strategic locations that, due to specific circumstances, historical importance, geographical location, etc., it deserves to be a bit more unique while having increased gameplay importance. These locations will have increased limits for certain buildings depending on the type of strategic locations. Some of the islands, like the Truk and the Guam, may have an increased naval base caps. Other could have increased airfield or fort caps, or a mix of both. So it looks like they've not gone for a one-size-fits-all. They've just defined a strategic location, and they've said that this location, because of some historical significance, such as a natural harbor, or maybe an important battle that happened there, we're going to increase the airbase numbers. But it basically isn't a set system like forts, which depends on the terrain type. Defending against naval strikes. So, of course, we theorized that Japan and the Pacific is important. So, of course, we're going to hear about the Pearl Harbor attack, right? So now there are specific defenses against naval strikes. So it gives me the impression that naval strikes are going to be significantly buffed, because at the moment they're kind of crap. So here we have German planes, which are look torpedo bombers, and we have a based British Navy here in the Eastern North Sea. It looks like they're doing an actual strike. Can we talk about how these numbers aren't very visual? Would it be nice here to HMS Furious to have a little picture of a ship with a health bar, maybe? Other than just this ship and a number. Remember, we've got a nice GUI in Hearts of Iron 4. Wouldn't it be just kind of nice to have those visuals shown with it as well? Like, for instance, here too, like, there was 3 bombers, torpedo bombers that were destroyed. Why can't we have the icon for the bomber here? Maybe represent it as 3 different planes as well to represent the 3 was shot down. I don't know, just something to make it a little bit more visual, you know? Because right now this is just an Excel spreadsheet, which is just a little bit boring. One thing that didn't sit quite right with me for a long time was the fact that whenever a naval strike was performed on the task force that includes carriers, carrier planes would sit idle and twiddle their thumbs. Now carrier planes will participate in defensive task force against naval strikes with numbers depending on a few factors. You know, I never even knew how the stats actually worked for naval strikes. Oh, because this isn't a port strike. I presumed it was a port strike, but this is actually a naval strike. And it's simulating now these ships, these ones, are defending against these torpedo bombers. Maybe they've watched some of my videos or fellow YouTubers' videos where they notice that naval strike is incredibly OP. And one of the old metas, well, I say old because this is probably going to be patched, is to just make as many naval bombers or cassers as possible, bomb the English Channel as much as possible, eventually kick out the British Navy, and then you're in a situation where you've got full naval control and you can do your sea line. Potentially, in this circumstance, it looks like that might not work anymore, which I'm sad, but I'm also thankful for because it was a kind of a crap strategy. Once again, in OI4, one of the issues we've run into is we look for every excuse possible not to make a Navy. Because a lot of the time the Navy is, 1, difficult to build because they're expensive and take a long time. And then 2, when you've built them and you've got naval dominance, there's nothing to do with them. Hence, usually people just steal people's navies now as a part of peace conferences and then just forget about it. I mean, that's what I do anyway. So carrier planes will participate in the defense of task force against naval strikes with a number depending on a few factors. So we have carrier missions now. So this is a carrier fleet and doing a naval exercise. Okay. And then now we also have the air wings doing air exercises, I presume, on the actual ships, which you could do already. So I'm not sure how that's different, but it does actually look like right now they're doing a combination of air exercises here and also air superiority. Maybe they're split up into 2 different stacks. It's not quite clear. In this screenshot, you can see while the task force is executing the mission, in this case naval exercises, planes on the carrier can also perform air missions at the same time. In the second screenshot, I've selected all planes to do exercises, while in the last screenshot, I've opted for fighters to provide air cover and superiority. When I order my task force to operate in the North Pacific Sea Zone, so is it trying to imply that you can now combine air exercises and air superiority together? Another update when it comes to carriers that we will be doing is the ability to set and execute air missions from carrier air groups. This is a port strike, isn't it? While the task force that contains carriers are performing the missions, planes will be executing the missions selected in the same region that the task force is currently operating in. I always thought the way port strike should work to perform Pearl Harbors or, I don't know, the port strike of Taranto. Remember that when the British biplanes completely wiped out, well, knocked out the Italian fleet in Taranto? I feel like to execute that and show that and simulate that in game, you need to give big bonuses to naval strike for planes for planning a mission as if it's like a naval invasion. It takes time, the percentage bar goes up, you execute it, and if all the parameters are set correctly, do big, massive damage. Kind of implies that what that might be doing by saying performing missions, but we'll see. Another change for carriers is the introduction of carrier sub-surface detection values on Hangar modules. Especially what it does, it provides an increase in sub and surface detection to the ship scaled by a percentage of the planes it currently has. So it says here that this deck size, hangar space, provides you with sub detection and surface detection. So this is now implying that carriers can fulfill the role of detectors, which if everyone's looked up at any documentary about Pacific warfare in World War II, you'll notice that is what they did do, you know? They would actively send out planes in all directions in just the effort of spotting enemy ships around them. Which makes sense anyway, because catapults, one of the upgrades already for ships, is exactly that, you know? A catapult will be a plane attached to a ship to be launched just for scouting purposes. So it kind of makes sense that this exists. It's surprising it wasn't a part of the game already. Does it really change how you make carriers? Not really, no, because end of the day, the most effective carrier, the meta plane, is going to have as much deck space as possible anyway, the most hangars possible. You usually fill them as many slots as they can have, which is the meta. So you can basically say that these numbers scale really high. Careful here. There's a chance that these numbers might be so high that they might make radar pointless. If you have 60 planes in total, it'll be plus 15 surface and sub detection. With only 30 planes, it will provide that level. As usual, keep in mind these values may be adjusted at any time. Okay. Just be aware that usually the meta of most people in multiplayer is to make as many hangars on carriers as possible. So this doesn't really change the game. This is just basically a flat buff for carriers. Okay, let's get to the spiciness. We have the Marines, proficient at attacking over straits and naval invasions. We have the paratroopers, which can be launched from planes. And that's it. Yeah, they can be launched from planes. And at the moment, the way the game mechanics work is it's a bit of a suicide mission because they end up taking some incredibly eye-watering penalties. They did have a really cool bonus in the old days where you could deorg divisions by paratrooping on top of them, but they nerfed that into the ground. I mean, so deep into the ground that it's just basically not usable anymore. I think it has a 28-day cooldown now. Yep, used to be really cool. Not so much. Do I touch these? Not really, unless I want to cap Franz early. Mountaineers, proficient in hills and mountains. Pretty much says what it does on the tin. Probably the most OP one in the game. And then we have the tree grabbing special forces. Surely it's just not, we're not going to get rangers because many different mods already introduce rangers. So just adding rangers again just kind of feels like a little bit underwhelming. Can anyone guess what the new branch of special forces could possibly be? I don't know. To fight on all jungles and islands, we're introducing a new branch of special forces, which were initially called for quite some time Jungle Specialists. Interesting. The temporary name was great so as long as they remain on the design board, but for the actual implementation, finding the right name for them provided to be quite challenging for us. We went through special different names such as Jaegers and Chindits. But hold up, aren't Rangers in-game already as a support company unlocked by Mountaineers Special Doctrine, what you ask? Yes! And they will be renamed to Recon Rangers. I see. Recon Rangers will be unlocked by either picking the Mountaineers Special Doctrine or the Rangers Special Doctrine. Okay, so now we know, and the first time ever, Special Forces will share a specific tech within the doctrines, which is quite new and interesting. Rangers especially will be fighting in woods and jungles, and of course they can be further customized by boosted by the Rangers Special Forces Doctrine. I'm not against them adding theirs. It just kind of feels like we've experienced this, we've played with it, and we've mastered it as a ported road to 56, right? I mean, we've all unlocked these guys, right? And I'll be honest with you, fighting an area like the Amazon, which is a very tricky area to fight, it feels advantageous to fight in those specific regions. Trying to think of anything else. I suppose there's all Indochina as well. We've got Thailand. We have Burma. I can think of those specific regions of the world that are quite effective. I suppose the point I'm getting at is because there aren't many of these regions in the game, it makes me question their effectiveness and whether it's worthwhile. Hence the reason why going for the path of Rangers, which they used to be called, was quite useful for just fighting these specific areas. But just think how easy it is to swap out a support company. You just change it out for 10 XP. Boom, gone. Changed, done, moving on. Having to change out the entirety of the division for special forces, specifically for a woodland-based commando, is a little bit more difficult because it costs you significantly more XP. The point I'm getting at is that once again, because these special forces are very situational in certain parts of the world, it questions whether it's worthwhile to actually tech into them. Being able to operate with large forces in densely wooded areas, our army can outflank and outmaneuver enemy forces. Do you know what would be really cool? If they were brutally OP in these regions of the world. Like, for instance, when they were in woods or forests or jungles, they consumed very little supply. Like they were under the radar, like they were stealth assassins, you know what I mean? They were geared specifically to fight so well optimally in these regions that they just don't use supply. And tends to be in the Amazon where the supply is already pretty bad. It'd be kind of cool to have that really good key advantage. I imagine the multiplayer people would definitely abuse that. Okay, so we have the first one here with the star. Then we have this one here with the weights. This one is got the weights, but he's in a more dense jungle. This one is shush, shush, shush. So you're invisible in the jungle. This is fun. This one's got a star and a fort. Interesting. And this one's got the artillery one. Okay, so it tells me probably artillery bonuses for jungles. Then we have a city fighting, which is unique. Remember, that's unique because there isn't really a support company at the moment that has any bonuses support towards urban warfare other than flame tanks. They're the only ones I can think of that don't encompass other bonuses as well. Yeah, the only ones I can think of. So that's actually quite useful. I kind of like that, actually. The only issue I find with attacking into urban is that the urban penalties are not even that big. So I always question, like, well, why do I care? For instance, as an example with mountaineers, mountain penalties are so overwhelmingly massive, it's worth going for a mountaineer specialist to break those mountain tiles. But then urban is not even that bad, so I question if it's even worth going for. But I suppose it's always useful to have that bonus anyway, if you wanted to stack it, for instance, with tanks, for instance. But maybe you won't be able to stack it with tanks due to the speed limit. Who knows? So what we've got here, we have the engineer ranger, or that could be a campfire, or it could be a bone. Who knows? Use your imagination. And then we have this one here with the dual wield. Oh, shit. Yeah, based on the other special forces bonuses, this is the one that gives bonuses just specifically for that group. So in this case, Rangers. And this one would be a bonus for all special forces. That's just probably a guess. But that means you could stack a maximum of plus 40% bonus. Is it 5% per age? It's 5%. So in that case, it'd be 20% bonus if you went down all 4 branches. But is it even possible to go down 4 branches now? That means we're actually hard capped now, aren't we? Got so many questions. I'm going to leave you with another teaser for one of the new toys we will talk about in the future. This shouldn't be hard to guess, I think. So we have Escort with a sun. And it has a dude flying off. Is this a submarine? Or is this a carrier? I don't even know. It shouldn't be too hard, but I'm looking at it and being like, this is pretty hard. Any suggestions in the comments, guys? Please let me know. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want to see more of this content. If YouTube is not providing you with these content up to date and you're saying, where is Dave's content? Then please like, subscribe, and comment below. And then YouTube says, this is the stuff you want to see more of. These videos will magically appear in your reel. So do it.